guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
Joe Wilforth is a professor at UTC, an English professor. He teaches literary history and other classes, and he sent me a PDF this morning from a book by a couple of photocopied pages of a book by Wendell Berry, A Continuous Harmony, Essays, Cultural and Agricultural. And I just want you to know that Joe Wilforth, professor, has a signed copy here, and you can see it on Facebook. I'm holding it up for the viewer on Facebook. Of course, it's backwards, and you can't read it unless you have a mirror. But it says, signed for Joe, January 4, 2009, with every good wish for Joe Wilforth, by Wendell Berry. Wendell Berry will be in town this weekend at the Southern Lit Alliance event. It is a Southern Writers event, Southward Literary Fest. They're saving letters here to avoid cluttering the landscape with extra letters. Southward Literary Fest by the Southern Lit Alliance. There's a remarkable, I'd say a remarkable thrift in letters by this organization. So they're leaving the use of these letters to the writers who come, right? There will be all kinds of poets and novelists who will be coming here, as some academicians who are, of course, not writers, though they produce a tremendous volume of words in the dreary academic literature of our day. They'll be speaking too, hopefully cleaning up their acts for the listener of their disquisitions at the event. Now, I mentioned this printout because I got it as a PDF, so I have my own copy of Wendell Berry's signature. And there's in this essay a paragraph I want you to hear about how all the problems hang together. He has a choice. Oh, just by the way, let me just turn back here. He has a choice phrase about Chattanooga Organized for Action verbs. Well, it's not directly about that local liberal organization that thinks that somehow views me as a classical liberal as an enemy. It's funny that Chris, the former head here, Chris Brooks, who's not here now, and Joel Perrin, I think his name is, or Ron Perrin, they think somehow that I'm an enemy, but I'm a classical liberal, so they should view me as an ally, right? Just as Mark West views me as an ally. And both sides, the conservatives and the liberals, need to understand that David Tulis, he's not playing down the middle, but he has a completely different analysis from their stodgy division. Sometimes their stodgy division. But Wendell Berry, in mentioning indirectly in this essay, Chattanooga Organized for Action verb, says, for most people, those causes have remained almost entirely abstract. There has been too little personal involvement and too much involvement in organizations, okay, here we go, that were insisting that other organizations should do what's right. And that's what Chattanooga Organized for Action verbs is all about. Getting the Congress to pass more money for food stamps. That's kind of what it espouses when it raises its eyes to the national scene. Otherwise, it has a lococentric perspective, which has many good things. I'd like to suggest. With queer theory aside, its ideas on queer theory are simply going to be, they have no credit, and they're simply wrong, and they're ungodly. But that's what they're doing. Here's a great quote from Wendell Berry about well, in a way, the arguments that I make here on the David Tulis program. He says, what we're up against in this country, in any attempt to invoke private responsibility, is that we have nearly destroyed private life. Okay, now that's one of my own arguments, is that we need to be private people, and we need to find a way out of commerce back into having a private existence. Our people, he says, have given up their independence in return for the cheap seductions and the shoddy merchandise of so-called affluence. We have delegated all our vital functions and responsibilities to salesmen and agents and bureaus and experts of all sorts. We cannot feed, Wendell Berry says, or clothe ourselves, or entertain ourselves, or communicate with each other, or be charitable, or neighborly, or loving, or even respect ourselves without recourse to a merchant, or a corporation, or a public service organization, or an agency of the government, or a style setter, or an expert. I think this is very good. Most of us cannot think of dissenting from the opinions or the actions of one organization without first forming a new organization. Individualism is going around these days in uniform, handing out the party line on individualism. Dissenters want to publish their personal opinions over 1,000 signatures. So I think that's very funny. I mean, that last sentence is wildly hilarious. And we're just going to have to hear more from Wendell Berry. And again, he's at the Southern Literary Conference. It's Friday. You'll want to find out more about that I'm looking right now at the Time Free Press a story in the entertainment section, and it starts Friday at 9:15 a.m. with a poetry reading and discussion with Andrew Hudgens, Rodney Jones, and C. Dale Young. So poetry readings in the morning. There's a prose reading and discussion, and then let's see. I don't know if I can make any of that, but it goes on. But anyway, that's at UTC. I do want to encourage you to make note of it and get some Wendell Berry books. Okay, get some Wendell Berry. He's a very fine humanist and has many good things to say that are, I'd say, harmonious. Since that is his essay title is A Continuous Harmony. It is harmonious with much of what you glean from the David Tulis program here at Nooga Radio. Speaking of harmony, the idea that we've heard in the press, especially with the Texas shoot down of five police officers from a disgruntled former military man. We've had the idea that there's a war on cops, but that's simply not true. The war on cops is a media creation, right? It is a media creation. And writing at Mises Institute at Mises.org, MISES.org, there's a brief today, and it says there is no war on cops. And here it is from the 2016 data that there's no hint of that being remotely true. It's police officer or deputy is not in the top 30 most dangerous professions. The category is police or sheriff's patrol officers. These are not in that category of top 30 of fatal injury rates. Policing is behind logging, mining, fishing, farming, aquaculture, aircraft piloting, roofing, collecting refuse, iron and steel working, trucking, power line installing, landscaping, construction, waste management, cement manufacturing, taxi driving, and mechanical repair. These are more dangerous than being an officer, and the violent deaths by officers is half of what it was in the 1970s. So it is here in Chattanooga, we can say that insofar as this data reflects life here, that speaks well of you, my listener, here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County in Southeast Tennessee. You are a more generous, more pacific, more peaceful, hopefully more God-loving, right, man. There's a quote here from von Mises in his great little book Bureaucracy, and I haven't read it yet, so maybe just bear with me as I soak this up. He says that the police department's work is so efficient that the citizens are fairly well protected against murder, robbery, and theft, does not oblige the rest of the people to be more grateful to the police officers than to any other fellow citizen rendering useful services. The police officer and the fireman have no better claim to the public's gratitude than the doctors, the railroad engineers, the welders, the sailors, or the manufacturers of any useful commodity. It is true that society could not do without the services rendered by patrolmen. Well, Mises is being very gracious here. But it is no less true that everyone would suffer great damage if there were no scavengers, chimney sweepers, dishwashers, and bug exterminators. So I think that's putting things in perspective. We need all these people. We need the man who specializes in writing traffic tickets and investigating drive-by shootings. Right, that man we want to thank for his work in the marketplace. Finding the malefactor and bringing the malefactor to bar. That is what he should be doing. Now, speaking of bringing people to bar, what if you're for marriage? Now, that in England, which has a great tradition of free speech, but one that has been sharply curtailed by the good people, we have an immigrant named Felix Ngole. He's a black man, a very handsome name from Africa. And I'm reading here at lifesitenews.com, he is being brought to bar starting in a process that began 2 years ago, right? This is an ordeal that has lasted 2 years because he called queer marriage a sin. He says in a Facebook post in 2015, this man working for a master's degree in social work at Sheffield University, he was making a comment about Kim Davis, the American county clerk who refused to marry queers to grant them state license to marry. He said, same-sex marriage is either a sin, whether we like it or not. It is God's words, and man's sentiments would not change his words. That's that's the offending phrase. And so this was 2 months later. Of course, the busy bees in the politically correct offices of the LGBT rights division brought this man to bar. He's being supported by the Christian Legal Center, and challenged the university's decision to oust him as a student, to throw him out as a student. So there was a 2-day hearing about this. I think a 2-day trial over a bit of free speech, right? A bit of trivial free speech. It's trivial, whatever people post on Facebook is trivial. Here's a man though whose words are coming. He's constantly reminded of the truth of them, of course. And so thereby has the steel in his heart to say, well, come on, I've done nothing wrong. Show me who's been injured. Well, this is what happens when you have a non-common law legal system, and you have a legal system where right and wrong is defined statutorily or by written regulation, right? Then you have a multiplication of crimes, right? You have a multiplication of traps that the innocent person speaking his mind can fall into. The court heard that the university investigatory team accepted that Felix was fully entitled to his religious beliefs and had acted honestly and with honesty and integrity. Okay, so they grant that much. The university held that it was not his views that were at issue, but his public posting of these views. Now, that's the problem. They may have caused offense to some individuals, we read. The Christian Legal Center is headed by Chief Executive Andrea Williams, and she says the court has ruled that though Felix is entitled to hold his biblical views on sexual ethics, he is not entitled to express them. But freedom to believe without freedom of expression is no freedom at all. It's funny how people just don't recognize that. Many views are frequently expressed by students on social media and in other contexts. It is the expression of biblical morality that has been singled out for sanction by the university. The university, in investigating Felix's personal Facebook posts and disciplining him for them, is acting as if they are a thought police. This ruling will have a chilling effect on Christian students up and down the country who will now understand that their personal social media posts may be investigated for political correctness. As the judgment stated, it is an important right. Notice how they're giving something to you here. They're giving you this recognition that freedom of expression is an important right, and going on, exercising that right to express the content of deeply held religious views deserves respect in a democratic and plural society. Nowhere more so than in a university. They're still giving away the store there. In this case, however, the judge has failed to safeguard Felix's freedom of expression in spite of the importance she rightly attaches to that freedom. Of course, we're quoting here from the Christian Legal Center. So this is what people want. So the question I have for you is, you have these rights, the right to stay silent. That's an important right we mentioned a moment ago, and then you have a right to speak. So these are rights that I would suggest that you feeling the sense of optimism that I do, right? Feeling the sense of empowerment that I have, empowered by God's grace. Okay, right? Empowered by the fact that I was able to eat breakfast this morning. And that I have the miracle of digestion going on that single piece of bread and that banana in my stomach. The miracle of digestion, the ability to stand and to speak, and to breathe and to blink, and to have, as I do these two important activities, my bow tie bobbing up and down, right? That making me the man with the bow tie, the smartest guy with the bow tie in Chattanooga, David Tulis, and those are all miracles. And because I'm invigorated by the promise of God's forgiveness, right? I'm going to be gracious to other people. I'm going to be very gracious to other people. Speak my mind to them, or refuse to speak my mind, right? Or refuse to give incriminating data that are sought by the two FBI agents who are there at my door, ready to have a personal interrogation of me not allowing any recording, not making any recording, and then jotting down their notes in Form 302. Form 302, the inevitable result of a twin-headed interrogation by agents of the FBI. You should never talk to anybody from the FBI ever. Just say indict me, and what they'll do is they'll lie to you about your situation, right? Well, we've got important questions in an investigation. Are you the topic of the investigation? No, we're not investigating, but somebody else. We just want to know some things about your activities, right? and so it's all going to end up on Form 302, and then they'll charge you with lying. They'll charge you with lying to them and misleading them, making important omissions or important missuggestions about the truth, and you will be ripped to pieces in a grand jury, and you'll be indicted. The grand jury that can indict a ham sandwich, as Harvey Silverglate likes to remind us. Well, speaking of the bar, there's a high bar in South Pittsburgh, and this has been in our news report. Natalie Potts at TV3 is telling about Sheriff Bo Burnett, and I'd say a not estimable presentation by the acting chief in that city, the chief of police, Brenda Roth. And the story, I think, is sidetracked on her staffing problems. Right, we have a woman accusing a part-time officer of sexual assault, and this apparently happened Friday night, according to the Marion County Sheriff's Office. Ronnie Bo Burnett will not tell Natalie Potts of TV3 the name of the accused officer. There are just a few. Okay? So it could be one man or the other. It seems like if they're that few, you want to give the name and remove the odium from the other one, right? The other officer who's a part-timer. It's one of the two. Of course, everybody knows, but we can't find out. And I think Natalie should be a little bit more aggressive. I think she needs to say, well, who is it? I mean, it's got to be, you've got such a small staff. It's one man or the other. Who is it? Don't have the innocent man under the shadow of doubt of the public by not saying who it is. Come on, this is a public matter. Let us have it. And the other questions would be, well, sir, don't you think we should be very careful about having male officers dealing with females? Don't you think there should be great respect? There should be a reverence of that sexual distinction between male and female. Men are less than women, right? Women are better than men. Therefore, anyone in police custody who's a woman should be treated with great respect, right? Not that she's a piece of trash. I was watching this morning a video of an officer in Utah who had arrested two young women on alleged narcotics charges, and he said she's a mouthy bee, the word for female dog. She's a mouthy bee. I wish I could have put a bullet between the foreheads of both of them. That's what he said. His camera was rolling, and he was wandering back into this awful administrative police area full of clutter and desks and junk and all kinds of stuff. And there's a woman at a desk, and he's telling that to her. He wishes he could have put a bullet in the heads of the mouthy bee, the heads of both of them. He says there is that kind of attitude which is just ungodly. That a man would ever say that he would ever wish that is just hideous. It is simply hideous. Where is God's grace in that man's life? Where is God's grace in that man's person? Anyway, we have a question about a loss of trust, and Sheriff Burnett says anytime like anything like this happens, this is how people talk, right? It's very vernacular. Anytime like anything like this happens, the community loses trust, and I don't want that, says Sheriff Burnett, quoting here from Natalie Potts's story. There's bad employees in every type of work, and if one has done something, even a police officer has done something wrong, then we will face the same thing as anybody else. It's very vernacular. You can tell it's an accurate quote because it sounds the way people speak. That's how people speak, and that's how people think. That's how they think, right? And so Sheriff Burnett, who's a man of the people, right? A man of the earth, right? And that is, by the way, the role of sheriff. He comes from the earth. His role is common law origin. He comes from the people and is elected by them. So he best represents the people of Marion County. And we are very pro-sheriff, by the way, at our station. We are very pro-sheriff and call on reform there as well in the sheriff's departments as well as in police departments. Police departments have a legal doubt underneath them. And that's because city corporations are civil. They're civil and don't have punitive authority. And yet we have police departments that enforce punitive statutes at every point. And I'm not sure about the legality of it. I think we need to look into that some more. And you, my listener, can help me with that. And that, yes, you can do that. Yeah. Here's how you do that. You want to help me? Free me up. Give me some time, and I will do some deep reading on this. I've probably got about 20 cases to dig up at UTC using the LexisNexis search engine there, and to find out how Chattanooga versus Davis and City of Chattanooga versus Myers have played out in other decisions. I think that I also need to do an open records request on a court opinion that's been deep sixed. The intermediate court opinion between the high court ruling on Chattanooga versus Davis and the ruling at circuit court in Chattanooga is missing. It's missing. It's not in the record. Why? It's been deep sixed. So I need to find out more about that. Where's that case? You can help me in these efforts by doing the following: patronizing all my advertisers. Here's how that works. In the radio field, if my advertisers at Nooga Radio are happy to be here because they're getting more business, then that means that David Tulis can end the most enjoyable task I've had for 5 years, and that's being salesman. I'm a salesman and love the job because I get to meet so many people in local economy. That's where I get a lot of my local economy ideas, and even people you've had interviewed here on the show are people I meet in sales calls, and that's because I just love finding out about small business, and truly believe that small business is, in a way, a kind of salvation for our city. If we have more small businesses, then we will be able to weather the downturns that will affect the big players like Volkswagen. I mean, Volkswagen could end up leaving Chattanooga at some point, as it did a city in Pennsylvania, just abandoned it, that plant that closed down. That can happen with the vagaries of international trade, the vagaries of fiat currencies gyrating up and down. Who knows? Though the target inflation rate is 2%, right? Debasement of your dollar 2% per year. That's what the Fed wants, but it says that it's way short of that, and we need to gin up the debt machine more to make more inflation. All right, that's what they want, but somehow the inflation is being choked down somewhere in some hidden part of the economy, and it's not showing up in prices. And that's what they're looking at prices, and they want prices to reflect inflation. So these people are. Where am I going with this? Well, here's how you can get me out in the workforce, the journalistic workforce. Support all of our advertisers here at Nooga Radio. Every one of them. You eat there, you shop there, you get your advice there, and you support these advertisers, and you say, hey, I know you're an advertiser at Nooga Radio, and I love Nooga Radio. I just want you to know I love Nooga Radio. I've heard your ad on Nooga Radio, and I'm here to support you in your business because you have told me about yourself through Nooga Radio, and that platform, favorite platform in Chattanooga, the best advertising venue in Chattanooga. And it's made that way because of you, my listener. You think about me. You want to support me. And so you patronize my advertisers, or you become one yourself. You say, I want the other listener at Nooga Radio to come into my business and patronize my wonderful staff services and products. So I'm going to advertise on Nooga Radio. That's what you need to do. Call me or call our wonderful marketing team here at Nooga Radio, right here in Chattanooga, Nooga-centric. And my name is David Tulis, and this show is brought to you by Nooganomics.com. That's Nooganomics.com. Subscribe now.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and